There are only 2 races until the summer break, so what moves in F1 fantasy are we going to make to have a great summer? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. I am especially excited for this week's race. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's because I missed some of the triple header. I am excited to get back into some content creation, and there will be 3 episodes this week actually on F1 Fantasy Pole Position YouTube channel and on the podcast side. So like and subscribe to the channel. We are 4 subscribers away from 500 subscribers. So let's get that done before we do battle on the Hungaroring against each other. I am wearing my Logie Bear Logan Sargent t-shirt today because one might be one of the few races remaining that I can actually wear this with it having a driver on the grid. And another is we're actually going to talk quite a bit about Logan Sargent in today's Hungarian Grand Prix preview. So like and subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube channel. Any support is greatly appreciated. I'm going to be putting out a ton of content this week, next week, and during the summer break. So make sure you stick around, get subscribed, get notified whenever a F1 Fantasy Pole Position podcast goes live. But like I was saying, 3 episodes this week. We've got the Hungarian Grand Prix preview. We're going to have red flag, yellow flag, green flag is coming back, and a deadline live stream on Saturday. Yes, you saw that correctly. There will be tons of us arguing about what lineups to do before the deadline at Budapest at the Hungaroring. So make sure you check out my deadline live stream on Saturday, July 20th. Yes, the 1 hour before lock, right there below me right now, 4 p.m. local, 3 p.m. UK, 10 a.m. Eastern in the USA. So I will be live on YouTube 1 hour before that. So come join me. Let's talk about some F1 fantasy together. Quick Hungaroring preview here, just facts and stats kind of thing. 4.381 kilometers, 70 laps, 14 corners, 2 DRS zones. First Grand Prix here was in 1986. Used to be called Monaco without walls, but that reputation has kind of gone away a little bit. The back-to-back DRS zones are quite tricky for drivers. It's not the highest of overtaking tracks. It can get a little processional at times, but with these new regs, with all the cars getting closer together, each week it seems like there's a new team on top. So we will see how everything looks this week in Hungary. But yeah, just some basic facts and stats there about the Hungaroring. Session times for the Hungarian Grand Prix preview, just a regular weekend, no sprint, practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, qualifying 4 p.m. local time in Hungary, 3 p.m. in the UK, and 10 a.m. in the USA East Coast time. That is when our F1 fantasy lineups will lock. So make sure you check out my deadline live stream. Like I just said 30 seconds ago, I will be here. I will probably be as hyped up as this. I maybe had too much coffee this morning before the race preview got started. Tires here, C3, C4, C5, the 3 softest compounds that are available to us in F1 for now. Should be, I think last year it was a 2-stop race. I would expect something similar, especially with it is going to be piping hot in Budapest this weekend. 33 degrees Celsius on Friday, 33 degrees Celsius on Saturday, and 34 degrees Celsius on Sunday. Friday should have some wet running. Saturday should be dry. So hopefully on Friday, FP2 is dry so that we can get some representative qualifying and some long run data in the F1 data world from F1 Fantasy Tools, F1.com, 11 to 5, FF Trout, all those fantastic guys that make our decisions that much easier in F1 Fantasy. But Sunday, 65% chance of some precipitation, potentially some thunderstorms in the afternoon. It is a little bit early in the week for them to have a detailed forecast as of right now, but 34 degrees Celsius with weather or with precipitation, sunshine. It could be some changing conditions. So we could be in for another banger after Silverstone as well. So I will definitely be tuned in watching the Hungarian Grand Prix on Sunday afternoon, where you can follow me expressing all my ups, downs, highs, lows on X at F1UNFPL. So check me out over there. 2023 Hungarian Grand Prix. I've got Sergio Perez here on the left looking confused because this is what we were used to in 2023. He would qualify low and then finish on the podium. And we were all like kind of all about Sergio Perez. But now with McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, all kind of taken a step towards Red Bull, and Red Bull not really advancing. Sergio Perez has been kind of left at the back of the pack, at least among the Formula A, as they are being titled over here. So Lewis Hamilton actually took pole here, but it was not meant to be for him. Max Verstappen kind of stormed to a 33-second victory, I think. Lando Norris got second, Sergio Perez third, Lewis fourth, Oscar Piastri fifth, George Russell sixth, Charles Leclerc seventh, Carlos Sainz eighth, Fernando Alonso ninth, and Lance Stroll 10th. So that was really like a very prototypical, the top 5 teams all finished in the top 10 there in Hungary. Are we going to be in for a shakeup this weekend in Budapest? We will see. Haas in bang up form right now. So could they be kind of closing the gap on Aston Martin that much further? We will wait and see what Friday's practice data tells us. Slow track traditionally. So Ferrari have had a lot of issues with their latest updates from Spain in the high-speed corners. They've come into some bouncing problems. It sounds like they're going to scrap that update and kind of go back to what they had in Imola. So we'll see if that, because it's a slower speed circuit, maybe Ferrari will come into play. But once again, we will just have to see what Friday's data tells us. But definitely check that out, F1.com, F1 Fancy Tools, whenever those sims come out. We will be going over all of that on the deadline live stream. So definitely tune in for that. Back of the pack here. Let's get into some previews, some talking points before we get into some team selection. There is a lot of debate going on right now in the F1 Fantasy community about whether or not to have Sargent in your team. Logie Bear right here, Bottas, Joe. And when I was doing the British Grand Prix review episode, I was kind of chit-chatting with myself at this camera that I'm doing right now. And I was kind of like, never Sargent. And then I was kind of like, never Sauber either. But the thing I want to talk about is how if you have to have one of these 3 guys, you got to go with Logan Sargent right now because everyone is losing value. No one is scoring any points among these 3. So if you need a budget enabler to get your preferred lineup, I don't really mind which of these 3 you go with. And well, I do mind. It should be Logan Sargent because he's not really doing that much worse than the other 2. And they're all kind of dropping in value. So on this graph here, back of the pack, Bottas, Joe, and Logan Sargent, points per race, points per million, best race this season, and the price rise from their starting price of the season. So Bottas here, 2.7 points per race, Joe Guan Yu, 3.8, Logan Sargent, 0.4 points per race. I think I did a bold predictions episode before the season started, and my bold prediction was that Logan Sargent would score positive F1 fantasy points. And it was looking good there for a while, but it has slowly and steadily fallen away. And I'm a little bit worried that bold prediction is not going to come true. Points per million, Bottas here at 0.4, Joe Guan Yu at 0.5, Logan Sargent 0.1. Their best race of the season in terms of points, 10 points for Bottas in Miami, 20 points for Joe Guan Yu in Miami, and 9 points for Logan Sargent in Japan. I mean, Miami is the sprint, so the Sauber boys got a little bit better there. There were some DNFs, obviously, but Logan Sargent hasn't hit double digits all season long. That is just, that is rough. And compared to their starting price at the season, Bottas has only gone up 1.3, Joe Guan Yu's only gone up 0.9, and Logan Sargent has gone down somehow 0.3 million. And that's what this graph illustrates right here. This is actually prices since China. So if you had Logan Sargent in China, 6.4 coming off a 0.5 increase, I believe. If you have just held him this entire time, you have lost 1.2 million. That is a bummer. You're not going to get that back. I don't think Logan, unless it's like a 7 DNF race and Logan survives that somehow, I don't think you're going to get that money back at all. Bottas and Joe, though, they haven't really, compared to the rest of the field, they aren't really not rising that much either. While they were all around the 6.5 mark into China, and now Bottas is at 7.7 heading into Hungary, it's still, if you don't have any of these drivers and you're thinking about buying one of them right now, look, they're all kind of falling away here. So Bottas spiked at 8 when he got to Spain, but it's been 7.9, 7.8, 7.7 now in the last 4 races. As for Joe Guan Yu, 7.9, 7.8, 7.7, 7.5 over the last 4 races. and Logan Sargent 5.6, 5.5, 5.3, 5.2. So all of these guys are just, they're not really scoring points. They're kind of bleeding your budget drip by drip. And at this point, when it comes to picking one of these three, I do favor Sargent just because he is that much cheaper, and I just don't see enough upside with Joe Guan Yu or Valtteri Bottas. That Sauber is kind of similar to the 2023 Haas that we watched last year. Like sometime, like Joe Guan Yu got into Q2 for the first time in Silverstone and then just sank like a stone all the way through the field. Bottas has spiked into Q2 a couple of times as well, and he just sinks back. So it's really on Sunday, these good qualifying, sometimes the good qualifying results that Sauber can put together, it costs F1 fantasy managers on Sunday because of the negative points they get from the positions lost. They're not really doing the overtake thing that Joe Guan Yu was used to do, or that we were used to Joe Guan Yu doing last year in F1 fantasy that made him such like kind of an overtake gem along with Yuki Tsunoda. That is not happening here in the 2024 season. So I'm just going to say I will cut my losses and kind of take Logan Sargent if I have to in my team selection later this week. Here is just something I saw and I want to put it together here. Big decisions, bigger consequences. So heading into China, a lot of us were kind of debating about Limitless. Some people weren't using Limitless, but I just thought this was interesting. Notice this on f1fantasytools.com. Just kind of seemed like a funny thing. So if you went into China and you were kind of choosing between your last two drivers here, Sargent plus Tsunoda cost you 15 million. Albon plus Hulkenberg cost you 14.7 million in China. Since China, Sargent plus Tsunoda has scored 49 points in F1 fantasy. Albon plus Hulkenberg has scored 63 points. If you take out the DNFs, Sargent plus Tsunoda has scored 100 points, so that's a 51 point difference. Albon and Hulkenberg have scored 139 points, so that's a 66 point difference. Hopefully I did that math right. Not my strongest suit, but and now the cost going into Hungary is Sargent and Tsunoda is worth 15.7 million, and Albon plus Hulkenberg is 18.7 million. So while Albon and Hulkenberg's pairing has gone up 4 million since China, Sargent and Tsunoda has only risen 0.7. And that's all Yuki, because as we just saw, Sargent has fallen 1.4 million since China. So it's just one of those strange things that could have like altered your season a little bit. And we're only halfway through. Silverstone was a halfway point. This is more of a reminder that there's still time to turn it around, but we do have to like look back at some point at these kind of like micro decisions that we made at some point in the season and just how they affected us going forward and how we can learn from that in the second half of the season, maybe going into the 2025 season. We will see I think we're going to see some driver changes during the summer break. That's maybe for a summer break video podcast kind of thing. Sounds like there's going to be some changes, possibly at Red Bull, possibly at Williams. We will see. But I just thought this was kind of like a looking back on it, like, wow, your F1 fantasy prospects could have drastically changed given this one decision from a race about 10 races ago. So yeah, just watch out for that going forward. Final talking point here is splitting strategies. We're talking about the 1A versus 4C driver and then 2B versus 3C. So I put this together on F1 Fantasy Tools using their recency weighted average metric that they've got there. Cost cap, I set at 120 million. So I was just kind of like, what are the best driver kind of lineups we can get here? So 1A, 4C, that's going to be the 1A driver is going to be Norris, and then the 4C is Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Tsunoda, and Bottas. 119.4 million. Predicted points in Hungary, 186.6 with the constructors, Red Bull, and McLaren. Whereas the 2B strategy is going to have Hamilton in there with Norris, McLaren and Mercedes as your constructors, and then Hulkenberg, Joe Guan Yu, and Sargent. That's 119.7 million and 186.3 predicted points going into Hungary. So throw your hands up in the air, and I guess we will see where it lies. But as of right now, this is kind of, I think it's going to be a big question heading into Hungary. And just before we get any data, we don't really need to make that much of a decision, like lock it in as of right now, because it's going to be extremely close. according to the recency weighted average on F1 Fantasy Tools. So we don't need to stress too much during the week. Like, we don't need to get into like Twitter battles or anything about what's right, what's wrong. Friday's data is going to tell us a lot. For where I'm sitting from right now, I do prefer the 1A 4C kind of lineup right now, but I think I would maybe reconstruct it a little bit. So I'm going to get that into that in team selection. Um, Compared to the 2B, 3C kind of lineup. Well, this isn't really a 2B here because I mean you're swapping out Red Bull for Mercedes, but it's about the same kind of thing. You can get to like a Russell and stuff as well. But instead of me just kind of rambling on about it, let's get into team selection. All right, so here is the F1 Fantasy Pole Position T1 team in all its glory. 118.7 million, 7,700 in the world. And, I was just doing some prep here, putting the team together, and I realized that I kind of messed that last segment up. So I'm just going to put my hands up there for a quick second and just say, maybe misjudged the 1A versus 2B kind of lineup here. And this is what I was meaning when I'm not entirely sure what I was saying there, but hopefully it made sense because it makes sense in my brain. But we're going to go through it right here in team selection. So stick around. Yes, like and subscribe for the confusing F1 fantasy analysis, I guess. But the two moves I can make here: Lando Norris out, Lance Stroll out, and Zhou Guan Yu out. I don't have 3 transfers. So I think with the rumors that Max Verstappen is going to take a new engine in Spa, so easy to overtake, that kind of thing, whatever. There's a world where I think I'm going to have to take a 10-point hit one of the next 2 weekends, and I just have to kind of decide when I want to take it. Do I want to take it this week and maybe just risk someone spiking? Maybe Logan Sargent can match his career or season best 9 points here in Hungary that he did in Japan, because then I'd have to go Logan Sargent, and then I can get Oscar Piastri in, and then Lewis Hamilton. And that's a very nice lineup. I like that lineup quite a lot. And that's the 2B lineup that I forgot to just take Lando out of that lineup. That was ridiculous. Sorry about that. But this is a 2B lineup that we should all be thinking about. Oscar, Lewis, Mercedes, McLaren. If you have more budget than me, I'm at 118.7 million. That is ideal to get Lando. I don't love the double kind of bottom of the barrel assets, but one, like I've been saying, Logan Sargent, Logie Bear, maybe he can get us one last F1 fantasy contribution here for the season. But this is where this would be a 10-point hit. I do have the wild card in hand. However, if I'm looking ahead to Spa and I have to get Max Verstappen in, this will be like I can go, I sacrifice Oscar and Lewis. I don't think that Ferrari are going to be able to fix their car in time for one of these next 2 races. I think that's Carlos Sainz was saying, I heard it on the race podcast earlier this week or on their YouTube channel, that it's an intrinsic weakness of the Ferrari to kind of be bouncing in the high-speed corners, and they've kind of covered it up throughout the season, but now it's really starting to come to the fold after this latest update that they put on the car. So Mercedes and McLaren for me are kind of clear 1-2 in the constructors. Just they've got 2 all-round drivers. They've got like Red Bull has the car, but only has 1 driver. Ferrari doesn't really have the car, and the drivers can't really like force their way to the front like Max can with the. Is it fair to say it's a subpar version of what we've seen from Red Bull over the last 2 seasons? I guess I'm going to say that. So yeah, Mercedes, McLaren as the constructors. And then here I can get Lewis and George, Lewis and Oscar, George and Oscar if I want. Oscar's just been so good, and he's been failed by his strategy team, by McLaren the last 2 races. And I think there's going to have to be a makeup time here. I know Oscar is a chill guy. I know he kind of comes across cool, calm, and collected on the radio, but he squeaky wheel gets the grease. And let's see if Oscar says anything. He won't say anything publicly because he just seems like that kind of guy. but I'm just wondering behind closed doors if he's like, guys, we got to get this fixed. I could have like he could have back to back race wins if McLaren had kind of nailed their strategy in Austria and in Silverstone. So Oscar Piastri, I do think that he is going to be a priority for me in my F1 fantasy team this week if I go with the 2B lineup. That doesn't mean that I have to. I can go back here. I can bring in Lando Norris. I'm still getting rid of Lance Stroll. That leaves me with 24.6 million in the bank. I've got Nico already. I really like how Alex Albon has been driving recently. 8, 12, 4, a minus 12 in Canada. I feel like the Williams, they're supposed to bring a pretty good update to this weekend. So we will see how that looks in Friday. But if Alex looks good, and I'm kind of feeling like, I mean, we got the Lando driver of the day nonsense as well. So you don't really want to go too far away from him there, but I can't get to that kind of huge lineup without sacrificing too many things and definitely burning my wild card. So that is kind of, well, I can't get to that massive 1A, 1B kind of lineup that I think a lot of you guys can get there, huh? Like, let me know in the comments below if you are going to be able to get there for Austria. But I'm going to have to run Sargent and a Sauber guy if I want to get there. I'm 0.6 short of Albon, which is a huge bummer. So if I want to kind of get the huge lineup in here, Lando and George, I mean, I'd have enough to get Lando and no, I wouldn't have enough to get Lando and Lewis. I keep forgetting that George fell 0.5 million, which was a huge bummer. I could get, yeah, that would really be it for me. So this is where I'm at. The dangers of not super pre-planning some of this team selection video here is I can just make mistakes and I have to go back and fix them. So I was about to say that I don't have to make I'd have to use my wild card here, but I can actually just get here with 2 transfers where I take out Pierre Gasly and Lance Stroll and put in George Russell and Logan Sargent, which is not ideal because I really don't like running 2 bottom of the barrel assets here. But if the data is just showing that Mercedes and McLaren are going to run away with this and it's going to be worth the risk of kind of running that back of the pack, I may take that. We'll see what the sims say. We'll see how all these cars are looking heading into Hungaroring. But this is kind of where my team is at with 118.7 million budget. But this is my T3 team over here, which has 125.6 million in cost cap, which sounds absurd when you compare it to my T1 team, but it's doing quite well. I think it's top 500 in the world, which is frustrating. I wish that was my T1 team. Let me know in the comments below. I think I said this a couple of race episodes ago. How are your teams doing? T1, T2, T3 is the one you care about the most not doing as well, because that seems to be happening to me. But 125.6 million. I've already got Lando. I've already got George. I got Nico. I got Pierre. I got Yuki. This is like an ideal lineup. I don't really have a lot of notes here. The only thing I could really think about doing is upgrading one of these back markers, but I only have 0.1 in the bank. I guess if I'm not feeling RB or Alpine, I could drop down to Alexander Albon, and that'd give me 11.5 to kind of run a double Haas lineup. And that looks quite nice to me, I would say. And I haven't talked about this yet, but I did want to just mention, keep this on your radars, F1 fantasy managers, because if the rumors are true that Daniel Ricciardo is set to replace Sergio Perez after the summer or during the summer break at Red Bull, and we get this guy at 10.9 million, I don't know how F1 is going to do it, because I don't think we've seen, since F1 took over the game a couple of seasons ago, I don't think we've just seen a straight driver swap. We've seen Nick DeVries get replaced by Daniel Ricciardo, but I think Ricciardo came at a different price. But Ricciardo moving to a different team, I'm not sure what F1 Fantasy is going to do with that. Are they just going to, it seems absurd that they could leave a driver in a Red Bull car at 10.9 million. And even if Ricciardo just scores what Perez scores in the Red Bull, like at 10.9 million, that's going to be the best asset in the game. So keep an eye on what they're going to do. Keep an eye on the rumors. We'll see. I think there's supposed to be like a clause in the contract that if Perez is behind Max by over 100 points at the summer break, like he can get axed. So we'll see how that goes. Definitely stay tuned to F1 Fantasy Pole Position, because I will definitely do a video if that happens during the summer break. And yeah, so just keep in mind that Daniel Ricciardo may be someone you want to have a plan for, or you're thinking about axing him. You may want to hold on to him. Red Bull historically has been quite ruthless. They've been a little nicer over the last 2 or 3 seasons, just kind of letting Sergio chug around in that car while they've had the car advantage. They haven't really needed him to do all that well, as Max has just been so far ahead. The Red Bull car has been so far ahead as well, but it sounds like their patience is wearing thin despite just signing Checo to that contract. So just wanted to highlight Daniel Ricciardo before the summer break, before Hungary, before Spa, that it could be something to note on your F1 fantasy radar, that maybe we're about to have a 10.9 million driver in a Red Bull car for the last 10 or so races of the F1 fantasy season. One last reminder for the preview episode that the lineup lock time for Saturday, July 20th, Hungary Grand Prix, is going to be 4 p.m. local time, 3 p.m. UK time, and 10 a.m. USA Eastern. And an hour before that, I will be going live on YouTube for a deadline live stream where I will be tearing my hair out over the decisions of 1A versus 1A 4C versus 2B 3C. And hopefully I don't get as confused as I did in this episode, but hopefully you guys will join me, set me straight there. We can talk F1 fantasy. I'll probably be answering questions on X as well. So if you can't join the live stream, hit me up on X at F1UNFPL. I will be delighted to talk F1 fantasy with you over there. There's going to be another pre-recorded episode here, green flag, yellow flag, red flag, for F1 fantasy pole position on the YouTube channel and going out on podcast. And then, yes, Saturday afternoon, join me on the YouTube channel, as hopefully we will get over 500 subscribers by there. Maybe we'll, pop some champagne or whatever fake champagne they pop on the podium. I'm not entirely sure. We will see. Hopefully 500 subscribers by then. If you are not a subscriber, please support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it before the summer break. That has been the goal during the first half of the season. And then we're going to go on to bigger and better things for the second half of the F1 fantasy season. Once again, good luck in Hungary if this is the last piece of content that you listen to or watch this week. But I will be back with 2 more episodes for the rest of y'all that can join me. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will talk to you next time.